Hello everybody, Senior Engineer MBA and investor, and in today's video I want to talk about why we are so early in this genomics revolution, in this CRISPR future. We are so early. Want to state a couple of reasons, and of course this is relating to a lot of recent news, but also put the big picture. I think a lot of us forget about the big picture. A lot of us, I think, expect things to happen like on a weekly basis. And the reality of things is it's often important to remind yourself where we are right now and where we could be in the next 5, 8, 10 years, right? So first of all, I do want to mention a couple of facts, right? I think a lot of people forget that we are in a market crash, and this market crash here has been really extended through all sectors in the market, except maybe commodities and specific sectors of the whole market as a whole, right? But when you talk about, technology companies, when you talk about real estate, when you're talking about specific assets, even, the whole Bitcoin world, a lot of things have been going down. And of course, genomics and biotech is not the exclusion here. They are included here with the market crash. We've seen it with companies like CRISPR Therapeutics and TLA, Beam Therapeutics, Caribou, all down 60, 70, some cases 80% in genomics company. In fact, Invitae, a genomics company, down 90 something percent. That's crazy, guys. 93, I think 94% when I last looked at it, from its all-time highs from early part of 2021. We've been in this longest bear market in biotech specifically of all history, right? This is the longest biotech bear market. Take that for what you will, right? I've been saying that for end of 2021. Obviously, things have gone down since. It's not like it'll go up in the next week. Who knows? Who can predict? But my point here is that, of course, we have macro environments here that are affecting these companies' performance, right? The second, I think, point that I want to make is that the reason why we're so early, I think a lot of people forget, is that the first clinical trial was done by CRISPR Therapeutics, and that was in 2019, right? So it's not even been 3 years, right? It's barely been almost 3 years, and CTX001, or now known as Hexacell, is going to be potentially the first program to be FDA approved by early part of 2023. We'll have submission by end of this year. Everything's on track. But look at, guys, it's going to be basically, by the time they FDA approve this thing, it's going to probably be about 3 years and a half. When you think about it, that's really a short time span. CRISPR as a tool, hasn't really gotten traction since 2012, right? So that's about 10 years, right? And as a tool, it hasn't been used on humans since under 3 years ago. So all the data we have is for less than 3 years. When you think about it, I'm not sure if the analogy is correct here, but when you think about like electrical vehicles, right? The Roadster came about in the late 2000s, right? And it wasn't really until 2015, 2014 that really, the whole Tesla EVs solidified the thesis that EVs are going to be the future, right? Everyone sort of had an idea by the end 2000, early 2001. 2010, but it wasn't really clear, right? And that's because you need more than just 2 to 3 to 4 years to really develop your thesis, right? In this case here, the thesis is CRISPR will be used in medical treatments. It will be FDA approved. This will take more than 3 years of data, right? Especially with these companies that don't have phase 1 data. I mean, there's two sides to this argument, right? The first side is how early we are, how so many companies that are being popularized in this space, like Beam Therapeutics. They don't even have phase 1 data. They don't even have human data to begin with. How early we are. Then there's the other side of the token where a lot of people will sort of criticize that, saying, well, what are they waiting for, and I don't think this is really the purpose of this video here. The point here is that the first side of the token, where we're so early that even some companies that are so popularized in this space don't even have data on human, right? So that's another reason why we're so early, right? And then I think the final reason here I want to jump into is a lot of people underestimate the S curve, right? What happens is, mainstream doesn't get on the S curve until maybe midway or at the tail end of the S curve, right? So what that means, right? That means like at the beginning, right? The beginning stage, this could take years, right? At the beginning stage, you get this, informed individual. You get people that are looking at this space, reading articles, publishing articles, people that go to these conferences, people that watch these videos for years and years, right? It's 3, 5, 6, 7 years. People go through this process of sort of being in a community of technology about CRISPR, where they learn about it, where they talk about it, where they shared information, and then you get these little, these little jumps, these little spikes. For example, The Economist media publisher covering it. You see The Verge covering it. You see Bloomberg having interviews with Dr. Doudna and so on. You see Nobel Prize winners coming about, like we saw in the end of 2020. You see these little spikes, right? You see books being published, like we saw by Walter Isaacson. So you see these amazing spikes, but ultimately these are just spikes. It's still not mainstream. What happens is when you do get to mainstream, now you see an influx of people, right? You see the influx of investors. You see the influx of the public, governments looking at it. You see communities looking at it. You see doctors, the scientific community really solidifying whatever tool we're talking about in the healthcare biotech world. In this case, we're talking about CRISPR. And really, us being in the early part of the S curve means that in the upcoming years, once we sort of start ramping up, you will see that popularity will explode, right? The popularity will explode. And what will happen is we're going to be in a state where all the early investors, including people from today and from next week and from next month and potentially by the end of this year, all these new investors and the existing investors will be rewarded for their patience, right? And that's what I'm getting at here in this purpose. Really, the purpose of this video is to remind you all that we're so early in this landscape. I think a lot of people expect things to change overnight. I mean, we haven't even talked about, governments like Cures 2.0 Bill Act that is set to be bipartisan bill in US. We haven't talked about programs like Health Canada and EMEA in Europe, EMA, the health regulatory agencies, where they can sort of accelerate this process as we get more data from these companies, whether that's from CRISPR Therapeutics and TLA, Caribou Biosciences, and the future companies in the CRISPR landscape that will be publishing human data, which is inevitable, right? And then you have these big pharma companies partnering up with these CRISPR companies, like we saw with Pfizer, like we've been seeing with Vertex, and of course, like we saw with Moderna dipping their toes in the CRISPR landscape. So lots of exciting things to come, guys. I think this is a perfect time to talk about the big picture, right? And, as much as we can get in the weeds there and see day-to-day price action, it's always a good idea to step back, look at the landscape, remind ourselves where we are in this timeline and where we could be in the next 3 to 5 years. And of course, question your level of patience, right? If there's one thing this market, this sector will teach you, in my opinion, is patience, right? Every time you're dedicated about a technology that has not hit mainstream yet, it tests out your patience. And that's exactly what I'm getting at in today's video. So thank you so much for watching, guys. If you found value, subscribe. If you haven't liked this video, do like this video. Hopefully you guys are having a beautiful end of the weekend here. It is Canada week, holiday next week. So hopefully lots of Canadians are going to have a beautiful week here. Thank you so much for watching. We'll see each other in the next video. Thank you.